I want to bring out the first speaker, and this speaker is Charlie James. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tyson, and thank you, Cindy, for inviting me to speak to this group today. While the slide's coming up, oh my God, where did that guy get so old? I was actually thinking about what I could contribute to this group of fathers. So today, hopefully a little bit of enablement or empowerment in terms of you as fathers who are entrepreneurs. A little bit about me as a parent, well, first off, an awesome wife who has a high tolerance for pain. Been married for 28 years, and it's been an extraordinary journey, moving all over the U.S., opening businesses and taking jobs and building houses. 2 wonderful daughters. But I was that kind of a father who was so busy building his career and frankly chasing my own dreams that I became disruptive to my family. When my children were little, my wife would rush to put the children to bed before I could get home to teach them bad habits that I thought were funny. So I made up for it a little bit later in life in the peak of my busy part of my career by becoming a court advocate for foster children. I met my second foster child when he was in prison he was falsely accused of executing both of his parents in San Jose. We got him through the court. We got him, his high school didn't want to let him graduate, so we got him his GED. We got him his first driver's license. We got him repaired with health. We got him into college, and after 6 years, he graduated with a college degree to pursue his journey as a park ranger. So I made up for a little bit of lost time as a parent and learned a lot. My profession today is I work with business owners, with executives and families to help them visualize and achieve results they never imagined. And we're going to talk about some principles of how they do that. But that's the glossy magazine portion of, isn't that great? That's what Charlie does. And it is a dream job. I'm very fortunate. But I want to tell you about a time in my life about 15 years ago. I'm in a dark room on the road somewhere where I couldn't remember what city I was in because I was working so hard and I was on the road 80% of the time. And part of being on the road meant getting 3 to 4 drinks every night because I was pretty stressed. Turns out early in my career I built 3 organizations from 0 to 100 million. Had 100 people as a guy in my late 20s or early 30s. I was making more money than I ever dreamed and I felt important and life seemed with limitless potential. And it really did. I got married to the dream woman. I started having these beautiful children. They started growing. But a funny thing happens in the tech world. Being a head of tech company is more dangerous than being an Alaskan ice fisherman. So during 15 years of growing every company that I ever worked for, at least 75 to 400%, I got fired 7 times. There were 7 different times where I was off for almost a full year. So what does that do to your psyche? It really starts weighing you down. I stopped feeling relevant. So what did I do? Well, I did the same thing any sane guy would do. I kept trying harder. And I got on that hamster wing. So it got to a point where I was 20 pounds overweight. I had ruptured disc in my back from stress. I drank, 4 or 5 times drinks, but every single day for like 20 some years. So that just kind of built on itself. So that's the negative version of what can happen when you get out of balance. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about how to stay in balance and how to achieve what you want in life in terms of your business, your financial success, and being a really great parent and building a great community. So we're going to cover balanced goals, we're going to cover prioritization, and we're going to talk about allocating time. That's the best thing I can do as the old guy in the room to pass on some lessons learned. And most of these are from some of the best known coaches out there. So one of the things I'm going to give you is a book, Eat That Frog, by one of the former world's best known coaches, Brian Tracy. And it's a great way to kind of get control of your life and start rethinking what's important and do more of that, and stop doing things that are less important and enjoy more time, because the things you'll come up with that are important are different than, maybe you will if you don't think about it. So let me ask you, what does legacy mean to any of you? Any volunteers?
The way you'll be remembered.
A way of being remembered? Anything else?
Some type of messaging that you'll leave behind, so it's echoing that.
Messaging. Anything else? There's our footprints as parents, creating these extraordinary citizens that will take the mantle for the next generation and have children. There's building businesses that creates jobs. There's building the confidence of your spouse, of your employees, the people that depend on you as leaders. There's a lot as legacy to deal with. But if you try to do everything, well, actually, a great saying is, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So the first part of today is about choices. So I want you to imagine walking out into a field, and the field is surrounded by targets, big, small, and someone's going to hand you $1 million if you hit the target. Is that good? What are your chances of hitting the target if the target could be anywhere around you, but they don't tell you what the target is? Not very good. So the first part about this is picking the right targets. So it turns out for this guy, the target is a barn, 10 feet behind him. So as long as he knows that his target is that barn 10 feet behind him, how do you like his chances of getting $1 million check? Pretty good. So let's talk about it. So the first part of the exercise today, and I'm going to provide these mailings to all of you. I'll provide my mailings and things. But in my coaching sessions, it doesn't matter whether it's an owner, doesn't matter whether it's an executive, and sometimes even families. I even do this talk with young unmarried moms that are supported through Hearts for Moms, where we help them figure out what's organized. So instead of just thinking about goals, which is a really good method, I'm going to ask you about balance goals. I'm going to think about 4 areas of your life, and I'm going to ask you a question, so pay attention, please. If your goals are financial independence, and these are just big general buckets, business success, health and fitness, and family and relationships, how would you score yourself? Like, you write it on a piece of paper. Be honest. What's your emotion? How do you score yourself in each one of those categories? I'm going to ask you a question. So everybody have a vision in their mind? What's your strongest area? Just shout out a couple answers.
Family and relationships.
Family and relationships. Anybody else?
Health and fitness.
Health and fitness. Anyone else?
Family and relationships.
I got to tell you, so I coach a lot of really high-profile Silicon Valley executives because I spent 30 years there. I also coach all other types of people. But a lot of times when I'm dealing with business owners, the problem is in the health and fitness and family and relationships. The ambitious people, the people who took the bait like I did, who overemphasize and sell themselves out for that high of being successful business-wise, of driving a really great car, or trying to make more and more money. Something's got to give. And it's usually health and it's usually fitness. But it doesn't surprise me that this group is here because we're committed to family. But pay attention to that. So one of the favorite exercises I'm going to encourage you to do is I want you to visualize what your life would be like on each one of those measures if your life was perfect. So for each one, for business success, imagine somebody who you really, really admire for business success and think about what that success would be like. Financial security, health, family, lifestyle. I like to add faith to that last bucket. So what you're doing is if you drew a diamond, this is a diamond chart analysis, and let's say a lot of you are feeling really good. Let's say you're scoring yourself on a score of 1 to 8 on health and fitness. So let's say there's a lot of 8s and 9s on family, and for whatever reason, financial independence, given the fact that everything has just gotten 3 times more expensive after the pandemic, for instance. We got to pay for college. We got to pay to live here. Florida's getting more and more expensive. So let's say that the scores start going down to 4s and 4s here. The first thing we're looking for is balance. So you pick your low area and you focus on the low area of the business, but all you're trying to do is get balance. Maybe go for 7s across all of those things. And then when you get to 7s, you have to decide how much energy do you want to put into improving your life for that purpose. But the first message is go for balance. Don't be the guy that wakes up in a hotel room whose wife actually hides the children at night when you get home because you can be so disruptive. And it's kind of funny, but it's kind of not. You know, when I think of myself, when I was on that chase, trying to get my career back, I started being the dad that started missing extended family meetings. My wife's brothers used to joke that they needed a cardboard cutout of Charlie when there was a family wedding for their kids. I missed those things, trying to go support my startup to get them over the hump. That's sometimes what it takes for startups. You guys know that as business owners, but go for balance. Any thoughts on that? Seems obvious. The other thing I want to mention to you, though, is the idea of how to achieve goals. It turns out Dominican University did a study across thousands of people. And people in general, and it's a relative score, that have goals achieve, let's say, 4 out of them, say 4 out of 10. If you write your goals down, which I'm advocating that you do on a piece of paper on that diamond chart, and I'll send you the form, you achieve 50% more of your goals. But if you just write it in action, like a task list, you actually achieve fewer goals. So defining what you want to achieve as a goal matters. It should be specific. So saying I want to get healthy isn't a goal. Saying I want to lose weight is specific. I want to lose 15 pounds is measurable. It's also aligned with the goals. It's also realistic, smart. And I say I want to lose 15 pounds by December. That's a smart goal. Anything short of that is a wish. And that's how things don't get done. Wishes don't always happen, especially if you're random and you're not focusing on 2 or 3 things that matter. So now let's talk about prioritization. We all have the same amount of time in our day. I don't know how many of you guys know, but studies were done. And it turns out that, how many of you guys work 50 hours a week? Do you work 50 hours a week? Cindy works 50 hours a week. Turns out that when we work 50 hours a week, statistically we get 37 hours of productivity. So we're essentially pouring 13 hours a day just down into nowhere. Anybody see how that happens? Turns out when we work 56 hours a week, we get 30 hours back. So there's a counterproductivity. So when you're on that treadmill, especially if you're a business owner and you're really driving for success, or you have a charity or anything else, there's a counterproductivity of trying to do too many things rather than more of the right things. And that's what the rest of what we'll talk about today. So my message is work less, get more done, and enjoy life. How's that sound? Yay! Yeah, it sounds like a win. So the book that I have for everybody who will watch this, it's been written, it's been around for 20 years. It's 21 chapters, 21 ideas to how to get more done, and specifically how to stop procrastinating. So the idea with Eat That Frog came with the idea is that when you've got an ugly thing that you've got to do, fire an employee, have a difficult discussion with your child, don't put it off to the end of the day when you don't have a lot of energy, or let it go and go and go. Take the things, the tasks that are most important to you achieving the nice balanced diamond and get them done. So the idea is you don't eat a frog slowly. And if you got 2 frogs, you eat the bigger one first. It's a nice vision for you. Anybody want that donut now? A second concept that I want to pass on to you, and it's so dead simple. How many of you have ever heard of the 80-20 rule? Most of you have. It's a universally true rule that it just gets proven over and over again. And it basically says 20% of the task that you do each day will get 80% of your result. Similarly, 20% of your employees cause 80% of your problems. It goes on and on and on. So the idea with prioritization is pick out the couple things that are going to make the biggest difference for you and do them, and schedule your best hours. So there's all kinds of business growth strategies, but they all talk about priorities as something called a rock. How many of you guys have ever heard of priorities as a rock in business? So the basic idea is, and we're going to talk about this in scheduling, is that you think through the things that for the year, for a 5-year period of time, for a quarter, a business quarter, a month, a week, a day. The 3 things that will get you the most traction, and do those things well. Do them early. Do them during your best thinking time. And if you're getting 80% of things done, you're probably going to be a lot better off than you are right now. And stop doing some of the other stuff. Allocate more time to the things that are important but not urgent. And that's the last thing. Anybody ever heard of a guy named Eisenhower? Used to be a president of the United States. Before that, he was a general leading the invasion of Europe to save the free world. Kind of an important job. You think he was stressed? You think he had a lot to do? So he came up with this method of prioritization that basically balances from bottom to top. The things at the top are more important, and the things that are closer to the quadrant are more urgent. So think of that as time. The basic premise is, 1, most of us spend way too many things working on things that are just simply unimportant. Anybody have an example of something that we regularly do that's unimportant, that eats up a lot of time?
Too much time on the phone.
Too much time on the phone. Anything else? Social media. That really hurt to say, didn't it, Cindy? Anything else? How about email? Email was never intended to be this back and forth thing that we go forward all the time. One of my clients here in South Florida is the oldest accounting firm in Florida. There's about 70 accountants. And basically, we reworked the idea of email. And we blocked out time for the big 3 thought tasks that accountants have to do. Turns out, when you're in a deep thought task and you stop it to take an email, do you know how long it takes for your brain to get turned back on? Anybody have an estimate?
Yeah, I think it's like 20 minutes or something every time you're interrupted.
It's at least 20 minutes. I've heard like 27 minutes. Now, I got a slower engine than a lot of you guys, so it's even slower for me. So the idea of using email as a transactional tool, so when we eliminated that, we basically blocked out the time for the big 3, the tax return reviews, staff meetings, doing other things. They testified that they got 2 hours a day back. What would you do with 2 hours a day?
Check email.
Yeah, exactly. So the bottom part is there's a bunch of stuff. My big one, frankly, is whenever I get restless or nervous, I go into social media. And when I go into social media, somehow the system knows to put something about Ohio State on. Ohio State comes on, and then because it's sports and the system starts tracking what guys look at, then there's all these other articles about conspiracies and things, and I'm gone. So I've really had to have discipline to stay above the line. So a big message here, though, is your big 3 rocks are probably urgent and important. You're doing them the course of the day. But what's an example of things that are important but not urgent? Think in the context of our children or our wives.
Spending time with them.
Date night. What happens to a couple that's married and never communicates? Or to a husband that comes home full of glory, having a great week, and the wife's got a couple small children there and she's exhausted? Or what happens when you work in a company and you don't develop your number 2 and your number 3 people to start doing the work that you do now? Those are examples of important but not urgent. But if you want to build a business, if you want to get more time back, and you want to develop people, you got to pay attention to what's important and not urgent, and you got to put it on your calendar and you got to get it done. So we're going to write down our plan, because when we write things down, it increases our chance of it happening. And now you guys can't see that at all. I understand that. This is something called the ideal week. There's one of my favorite coaches, is Michael Hyatt. Michael Hyatt used to be a publisher for Thomas Nelson Publishers. And he took them from small, struggling company to one of the best. When he sold it, he started a coaching company. And during COVID, that was the time that he decided that he didn't want to work every day. As a matter of fact, he decided he wanted to take 200 days a year off. So he nominated his daughter, Megan, to take over. But Megan's the mother of 5 special needs orphans from Africa. She became, during the pandemic, the CEO of Michael Hyatt and Company. And at that time, they said the world needs us more than ever. So they put a cap on the amount of time their employees could work. Anybody know what that cap was? 30 hours. They figured 30 hours mathematically was a good trade-off. No employees were allowed to work more than that, and their sales doubled. So it works. So this is called the Ideal Week by Michael Hyatt. I will send this report out. But the idea is you budget your time for what's important. So I have 3 pieces of advice. Create routines. There's something called a morning routine. So as parents, if you have small children, there's getting the kids up. There's making their breakfast. There's walking the dogs. All of those things are things that if you do them in the same order without thinking about them, it frees up your subconscious mind to focus on deeper tasks. Likewise, when you come into the office, doing things in the same order allows you to start your day and get things done, like maybe meet with your assistant and have your assistant report back on a bunch of things that she can take off your plate, or he. My assistant's in the Philippines and it's a he. So a workday startup. End of day. This is the money one. You want to figure out your big 3? Think about them the night before you leave. Why? Because remember Eat the Frog, the procrastination? How many of you ever showed up and wasted a good part of the morning figuring out what you're going to do? Pretty normal. So the idea is you figure out what's important the day before. They're big 3 rocks. And the beautiful thing is when they're in your head overnight, when you're in the shower, when you're walking the dogs, doing your morning routines, solutions start popping into your head. It's the way the brain works. That's a topic for another time. But Galileo, Michelangelo, Andrew Carnegie, who built both the Standard Oil Company and U.S. Steel, and built all the libraries in the U.S. in the turn of the century, they all use this idea of the superconscious, program your brain at night, come up with answers in the morning. So it works pretty good. Allocate your big 3 rocks and batch your work. So try to do things in common tasks so you're not jumping from a deep thought to a bunch of emails. Put your email, look at it first thing in the morning. If you have an assistant, have your assistant read through it, parse it, prioritize it, and then look at the end of the day. You want freedom, do this. Make your diamond chart. Chart what's important to you, but find balance. Write down your big 3 rocks at the end of each day and design your ideal week and eat that frog. My offer to you then, you can get your worksheet, you can get your free and the free coaching model, and as a bonus, if you guys stay connected, anybody wants to do that diamond chart analysis as a group, schedule it with me and I'll give you a free session. That's all I got for you. Anybody have anything for me?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.